The first signs came from Helios Station, orbiting dangerously close to the Sun. Unusual energy fluctuations, sudden gravitational anomalies, and radiation spikes that defied all established solar models. It was 2387, and Dr. Lyra Vu had spent 20 years studying stellar death. Yet nothing in her research had prepared her for what the data was showing. Earth's sun had entered an early termination cycle. The core was destabilizing at a rate that violated every known law of astrophysics. "The readings can't be right," muttered Dr. Vu, scrolling through the transmission from Helios for the third time. The holographic display bathed her office in ghostly blue light, numbers and graphs hanging in the air like specters. But deep down, she knew. The sun, humanity's ancient guardian and giver of life, was dying centuries ahead of schedule. And they had mere months before the first devastating plasma wave would reach Earth. The Aurora Arc project had been Lyra's brainchild long before this crisis. Originally conceived as humanity's first true interstellar vessel, it now represented their last hope. A massive Lightspeed-capable ship designed to carry 10,000 of humanity's brightest minds to Solara 4, a promising planet on the edge of their solar neighborhood. As project director, Lyra had assembled the finest team of engineers, physicians, and scientists from across Earth and its lunar and Martian colonies. They had been preparing for a scheduled departure in 2390. Now, they had 60 days. 60 days to determine who would survive the death of the sun. "We need to move up the timeline," Lyra announced to the project's leadership team, gathered in the command center of Titan II station, humanity's advanced research outpost on Saturn's largest moon. "Latest LIGO data confirms what we feared. The sun's core has become unstable. Conservative estimates give us 2 months before the first major solar event." The room fell silent. Through the vast observation window, Saturn's rings gleamed golden in the distant sunlight, the same light that would soon become humanity's executioner. 2 months? Engenheiro Mira Santos, the Brazilian warp engineer prodigy, was the first to speak. At 29, she was the youngest department head, but her genius with the experimental warp drive was unmatched. The engine calibrations alone would take that long under normal circumstances. "These aren't normal circumstances," replied Captain Rookhale, the military commander assigned to the mission. His weathered face, scarred from the Mars conflict, remained stoic, but his eyes betrayed concern. "We adapt or we die. The United Earth government has officially declared a planetary emergency," Lyra continued, bringing up a transmission bearing the UEG seal. "They've activated Aurora Protocol. We're now the highest priority mission in human history." "And who gets to leave?" asked Major Dokan Ngok, the Vietnamese-born chief medical officer. Her expertise in cryogenic suspension would be crucial for the journey. 10,000 seats for 8 billion people. The question hung in the air like a guillotine blade. "Priority goes to the engineers, scientists, medical professionals, and specialists needed to establish a colony," Lyra answered, her voice deliberately even. "The selection algorithm has already been running scenarios. We need genetic diversity, critical skills, and psychological stability." "And the rest?" Ngok pressed. Lyra's expression hardened. "They stay." The unspoken truth settled over the room. Billions would be left behind to face the sun's wrath. Every person in that command center had family, friends, and loved ones who would not make the cut. "Let's get to work," Captain Rook said, breaking the silence. "We have a species to save." As the team dispersed, Lyra remained at the window, staring at the distant pinpoint of light that was their sun. For 20 years, she had studied stellar evolution, but now, faced with actual extinction, science felt cold comfort. Her communicator pinged. It was a message from her parents on Earth. "We've heard the rumors. Is it true?" Lyra closed her eyes, feeling the weight of knowledge crushing down. Her parents, both accomplished historians, would not qualify for evacuation under any scenario the algorithm could generate. "It's true," she replied. "I'm sorry." Then, she straightened her shoulders and headed to the engineering bay. Humanity needed her focus now more than ever. The news broke worldwide the next day. Earth experienced atmospheric earthquakes, a phenomenon previously theoretical, as the sun's magnetic field began to fluctuate violently. Ionospheric disruptions caused global communications blackouts. The LIGO Cosmic Observatory had confirmed what Helios Station had detected. The sun's core was destabilizing. Humanity had approximately 2 months before the first major solar event would bathe the inner planets in lethal radiation. Panic erupted across Earth and its colonies. The spaceports were overrun with people desperate to secure passage off-world. The wealthy attempted to buy their way onto the Aurora Arc, while governments scrambled to determine which citizens would receive the precious evacuation tickets. In the midst of the chaos, Lyra found herself thrust into a new role: final coordinator for the Aurora mission. The United Earth government had placed the fate of humanity's remnant in her hands. Dr. Vu, the holographic projection of UEG President Akachi, filled her office. The situation on Earth is deteriorating rapidly. Korvax Industries is leveraging their control of the lunar shipyards to demand 50% of passenger capacity. Lyra's jaw tightened. Marcus Korvax, the ruthless CEO of the corporation that had built much of humanity's space infrastructure, was infamous for his belief that the wealthy and powerful deserved to survive more than the common citizen. "The Aurora Arc was never intended to save the elite," she replied firmly. "It's designed to preserve the knowledge and skills necessary to rebuild civilization." "I understand that." President Akachi's hologram flickered, a sign of the increasingly unstable communications. "But Korvax controls resources we need. They've threatened to withhold crucial components for the warp drive if we don't accede to their demands." Lyra leaned forward, her voice steel. "Then nationalize their facilities. This is humanity's extinction event, not a corporate negotiation." "It's not that simple." "It is that simple," Lyra cut him off. "Every seat taken by a Korvax executive is one less engineer, doctor, or agricultural specialist. We're not bringing passengers, Mr. President. We're bringing civilization's seed bank." After the transmission ended, Lyra turned to find Captain Rook standing in the doorway. "That was brave," he said. "Korvax won't take it well." "I don't care," Lyra replied. "We have bigger problems." "Like the Nature Shield protesters on Ganymede?" Rook raised an eyebrow. Lyra sighed. The Nature Shield was an activist group, arguing that humanity's technological advancements had accelerated the sun's decay. A theory with no scientific basis, but widespread emotional appeal. They had been staging increasingly disruptive protests at key facilities across the Jupiter moons. "And the 500 young scientists from the Titan Academy," she added. "They're demanding autonomous decision-making rights for their section of the Ark." "Kids," Rook shook his head. "They're brilliant, but they don't understand military chain of command." "We need them," Lyra reminded him. "Those kids represent our best hope for adapting to Solera 4's environment." The captain nodded reluctantly. "I'll try a more diplomatic approach. But Lyra—" He rarely used her first name. "We're running out of time for diplomacy." "I know," she whispered. "Trust me, I know." The situation deteriorated further in the following days. A senior engineer on the warp drive team was found dead in his quarters, an apparent suicide, though the timing raised suspicions. Hours later, the warp drive control systems were targeted by a sophisticated cyber attack that nearly collapsed the quantum stabilizers. Mira Santos worked for 72 hours straight to restore the systems, finally collapsing from exhaustion as the last firewall came back online. "It wasn't amateurs," she told Lyra from her medical bed, dark circles under her eyes. "Whoever did this knew exactly where to hit us. They almost succeeded in corrupting the navigational coordinates for Solera 4. "Korvax?" Lyra asked. Mira's expression darkened. "That would be my guess. They want the coordinates for themselves. If they can't control our ship, they'll build their own. Not in time, Lyra said. We have the only functional warp drive. For now, Mira warned. But they have resources, and desperation makes people work fast. On Ganymede, the young scientists' protest had evolved into a full-blown occupation of the staging facility, where their equipment was being prepared for loading. Their demands had expanded. They wanted guarantees that their families would be included in the passenger manifest. We understand the selection criteria. Their spokesperson, a brilliant 22-year-old physicist named Aiden Wu, told Lyra via secure channel. But we're asking for humanity, not algorithms. These are our parents, our siblings. Everyone has family, Lyra responded, fighting to keep her voice steady as she thought of her own parents on Earth. If we make exceptions, the entire system collapses. Then, maybe the system should collapse, Aiden replied. What good is preserving humanity if we lose our humanity in the process? The question haunted Lyra that night as she tried to sleep. From her quarters on Titan II, she could see Saturn's massive form filling the sky, its rings a constant reminder of beauty and order in the universe. Soon, that view would be gone forever, along with billions of lives. The burden of those choices was becoming unbearable. Her communicator chimed with an emergency alert. Heart racing, she answered. Dr. Vu. Captain Rook's voice was tight with urgency. We have a situation. The Aurora Ark is ready for departure, but we've detected a critical fault in the engine housing. We need to make an emergency stop at Titan II for refueling and repairs. What happened? Lyra was already pulling on her uniform. Sabotage, he replied grimly. Someone doesn't want us to leave. The Aurora Ark was humanity's masterpiece, a vessel nearly 2 kilometers long, powered by the experimental Epsilon warp drive that could theoretically achieve light speed. Its gleaming hull contained habitation rings, cryogenic chambers, agricultural sectors, and the accumulated knowledge of human civilization stored in quantum memory banks. As it docked at Titan II, even the experienced spacers stopped to stare. For many, it represented their only hope of survival. For others, it was a bitter reminder of those left behind. Lyra met the ship at the main airlock, where Captain Rook and a security team awaited. Status report, she demanded. The sabotage was sophisticated, Rook explained, as they walked through the ship's main corridor. Someone planted molecular disruptors in the cooling system. If we had initiated the warp sequence, the entire drive would have melted down. Casualties? 2 engineers who discovered the devices. They managed to contain the initial reaction but received lethal radiation doses. Lyra closed her eyes briefly. Their names. Takahashi and Alfarsi, Rook replied softly. Both had families on the manifest. Another weight added to her conscience. How long for repairs? 3 days minimum. Mira Santos joined them, her face drawn with fatigue. We need to replace the entire cooling array, and Titan II's facilities aren't designed for warp components. We don't have 3 days, Lyra said. LIGO just sent new data. The solar degradation is accelerating. We have maybe 48 hours before the first major plasma ejection. Then we have a choice to make, Rook said grimly. We can jettison half the cargo holds to reduce mass and use the extra fuel to compensate for the damaged cooling system. Or we can take more time for proper repairs and risk being caught in the ejection. What cargo would we lose? Lyra asked. Agricultural supplies, construction materials, some of the larger science equipment. Mira consulted her tablet. We'd still have the essentials for survival, but colonization would be significantly more challenging. Lyra thought of the billions who would never have a chance at all. Jettison the cargo. We leave in 24 hours. As the engineering team worked frantically to prepare the ship, news from Earth became increasingly dire. Global weather patterns had begun to destabilize as the sun's radiation fluctuated. Aurora Borealis appeared at the equator, beautiful harbingers of doom. Lyra was reviewing the final passenger manifest when Major Ngok found her. "The cryogenic chambers are ready," she reported. "But I've been thinking about your contingency plan." Lyra looked up sharply. The contingency plan was classified at the highest level. "If we need to redirect power from life support to the engines," Ngok continued carefully, "freezing passengers would be more humane than letting them suffocate." "Let's hope it doesn't come to that," Lyra replied. "Hope isn't a strategy." Ngok's voice was gentle but firm. "As Chief Medical Officer, I need to know. Could you make that call? Could you freeze 1,500 people without their consent to save the rest?" Lyra met her gaze steadily. "If those are the options, yes, I could." Ngok studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Good. Because I'm not sure I could give that order." "That's why it wouldn't be your decision," Lyra said, turning back to her work. The remaining hours passed in a blur of final preparations. The young scientists from Ganymede arrived under military escort. Their protest ended by the reality of the accelerating crisis. They boarded silently, each carrying only the authorized personal item allowance, 1 kilogram per passenger. Lyra stood at the departure control center, watching as the last group of passengers filed through the security checkpoint. Each face told a story: fear, hope, guilt, determination. Many avoided eye contact with her, as if looking at the woman who had chosen them for survival was too painful. Her communicator pinged with a message from her parents. "We're proud of you, Lyra. Save them. Remember us." She blinked back tears and continued her work. "All passengers accounted for," Captain Rook reported. "Final systems check complete. We're ready for departure." Lyra nodded, unable to trust her voice. "Dr. Vu," Rook continued more softly, "it's time. You need to board." She took one last look at the control center, at the faces of the Titan II crew, who would remain behind. They stood at attention, honoring the mission even as it left them to their fate. "Thank you," she said, her voice finally breaking, "for everything." The Aurora Ark undocked from Titan II with solemn precision. Its massive engines fired, pushing the vessel away from Saturn's moon and toward the outer reaches of the solar system, where they would activate the warp drive. Lyra stood on the bridge beside Captain Rook as the helmsman navigated the ship through Saturn's outer ring system. Behind them, the inner planets were already experiencing the first subtle effects of the sun's decay: increased solar flares, radiation spikes, gravitational anomalies. "Course plotted for the Kuiper Belt activation point," the navigation officer announced. "Estimated arrival, 18 hours. "Not fast enough," Lyra murmured, checking the latest data from the Helios station. "The first plasma wave will hit in 12. Rook's expression tightened. "Options? We could activate the warp drive closer to Saturn," Mira suggested from her engineering station. "It's risky. The gravitational interference could destabilize the field, but it would save us 6 hours. "And if the field destabilizes?" Rook asked. "The ship tears itself apart," Mira replied bluntly. "But we'd still be ahead of the plasma wave." Lyra closed her eyes, calculating variables in her head. "How certain are you of your calculations?" 87%, Mira answered without hesitation. "Not good enough," Rook shook his head. "It's better odds than our species has right now," Lyra countered. She turned to the helmsman. "Prepare for near-orbit warp activation. Mira, I want those calculations verified 3 times." "Aye, Doctor." The engineer's fingers flew across her console. "This is your call," Rook said quietly to Lyra. "But I need to be certain you're making it with a clear head." Lyra met his gaze. "My head is perfectly clear, Captain. We knew this mission would require calculated risks." "Very well," he nodded, then turned to the bridge crew. "Battle stations. Secure all decks for emergency maneuvers." The next 6 hours were the most tense of Lyra's life. The ship accelerated to its conventional maximum speed, straining to reach the designated warp point before the plasma wave could overtake them. Engineering teams worked frantically to reinforce the hastily repaired cooling systems. Major Ngok prepared the medical bays for potential casualties. Lyra was reviewing the final warp calculations when the ship's proximity alert blared. "Multiple vessels approaching from lunar trajectory," the tactical officer reported, his voice tight with surprise. "Identification?" Rook demanded. "Korvax Industries logos, sir. 5 ships, heavy armament." Lyra's blood ran cold. "How did they get here so quickly?" "They must have been preparing for this," Rook replied grimly. "Tactical. Shields to maximum. Warn them to keep their distance." Before the message could be sent, the lead Korvax vessel transmitted, "Aurora Arc, this is Marcus Korvax. You will power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Your mission parameters have been changed by executive order." "What executive order?" Lyra demanded. "The UEG gave us full authority." The screen flickered, revealing Marcus Korvax's aristocratic features. At 55, the corporate titan carried himself with the assurance of someone who had never heard the word no. "The UEG is in disarray. Dr. Vu," he smiled thinly. "In times of crisis, those with resources make the decisions. My ships carry 2,000 of Earth's finest minds, as selected by my criteria. Your vessel has ample room once we reprioritize the current passenger list." "You're talking about murdering passengers," Lyra said, her voice deadly calm. "I'm talking about survival of the fittest," Korvax corrected. "Now, transmit your coordinates for Solara 4, or we will take them by force." Rook stepped forward. "You're outgunned, Korvax. Your ships are mining vessels with retrofitted weapons. Ours is a military-grade expedition craft." "Perhaps," Korvax inclined his head. "But our sensors detect your warp drive is preparing for activation. A single hit to your engine housing would be catastrophic. Are you willing to risk 10,000 lives?" Lyra felt the bridge crew's eyes on her. This was no longer a scientific decision. It was war. "You have 60 seconds to withdraw," she told Korvax. "After that, we will consider your vessels hostile and respond accordingly." She cut the transmission before he could reply. "He's bluffing," Rook said quietly. "He wants the ship intact." "But he does want the coordinates," Lyra replied. "And he's right about one thing. We're vulnerable during warp preparation." She turned to the communications officer. "Send an encrypted message to Titan 2. Tell them to broadcast the Solara 4 coordinates on all frequencies in exactly 30 minutes." "What?" Rook looked shocked. "That would give everyone with a receiver our destination." "Exactly," Lyra nodded. "If everyone knows where we're going, Korvax has no leverage. He can't control what he can't monopolize." Understanding dawned on Rook's face. "But that would mean other ships could follow us." "If they can build warp drives in time, they're welcome to join us," Lyra said. "The more survivors, the better." "Dr. Vu," Mira called from her station. "The Korvax vessels are moving into attack formation." "Evasive maneuvers," Rook ordered. "Maintain warp preparation. All hands, brace for impact." The first shots from the Korvax fleet were warning blasts, designed to disable rather than destroy. The Aurora Arc shuddered as its shields absorbed the energy. "Return fire," Rook commanded. "Target their propulsion systems only." The ship's defensive arrays responded, sending precisely calibrated beams toward the attacking vessels. 2 of the smaller Korvax ships spun out of formation, their engines damaged. "They're targeting our communication array," the tactical officer warned. "They're trying to stop us from sending the coordinates," Lyra realized. "Divert power to shield that section." The bridge rocked violently as a blast breached their perimeter defenses. Warning lights flashed across every console. "Direct hit to communication systems," the officer reported. "Backup transmitters still online, but degraded." "Can we still send to Titan 2? Lyra demanded. "Yes, but we can't guarantee they'll receive clearly." Lyra turned to Mira. "How long until warp readiness?" 3 minutes, the engineer replied. her hands flying across multiple interfaces. But, Doctor, the cooling system is showing strain from the weapons fire. We may need to reduce passenger capacity to compensate. How many? Lyra asked, her voice tight. 1,500 minimum, Mira answered grimly. We'd need to divert life support from their sections to the engines. The contingency plan, exactly as they had feared. Major Ngok, Lyra activated the ship-wide communication. Initiate protocol sacrifice. Understood, came the solemn reply. Across the ship, medical teams rushed to the designated sections. Passengers watched in confusion as atmospheric controls shifted, introducing a mild sedative gas. As they lost consciousness, they would be placed in cryogenic suspension, sacrificing years of their lives to provide power for the ship's escape. Korvax is hailing us again, the communications officer reported. Ignore him, Lyra ordered. Focus all resources on warp preparation. The ship rocked with another hit. Warp cooling at critical levels, Mira warned. We need more power. Divert from non-essential systems, Rook ordered. Already done, Mira shook her head. It's not enough. Lyra made the hardest decision of her life. Divert power from the data cores, sections 3 through 7. Mira's eyes widened. That's the cultural archives. Music, art, literature. 3,000 years of human creation. What good is art if there's no one left to appreciate it? Lyra countered. Do it. With a pained expression, Mira executed the command. Across the ship, quantum memory banks containing humanity's greatest achievements powered down. Millennia of cultural heritage converted to raw energy for the engines. Warp capacity restored, Mira reported. Field stabilizing. 1 minute to activation. The Korvax flagship is moving to block our trajectory, Tactical warned. They're suicide bombing us, Rook realized. If they can't have the ship, no one can. Lyra stared at the view screen, watching the massive corporate vessel position itself directly in their path. In the background, she could see the first faint glow of the approaching plasma wave, the sun's dying breath reaching out to claim its children. All power to forward shields, she ordered. We're going through them. Collision course? Rook asked, surprised. We have no choice, Lyra replied. Warp field activation in 30 seconds. If we change course now, we lose the window. The bridge crew tensed as the massive Korvax flagship grew larger on their view screen. Behind it, the plasma wave's glow had become an ominous curtain of fire, spreading across the solar system. 15 seconds to impact, Tactical announced. 10 seconds to warp, Mira countered. Lyra gripped her console. Hold course! 5 seconds to impact. 3 seconds to warp. The Korvax flagship filled their view, its weapons firing continuously at their shields. Warp! Now! Mira shouted. Reality twisted. The fabric of space-time folded around the Aurora arc as its Ipsilon drive activated. For one eternal instant, the ship existed in multiple states simultaneously, about to collide with the Korvax vessel, yet already beyond it. Then, with a flash that briefly outshone the dying sun itself, the Aurora arc vanished from the solar system, leaving behind only the fading echo of its warp signature and 10 billion souls about to face extinction. Light years collapsed into subjective seconds. Stars streaked past like raindrops on a window. The fabric of reality groaned under the strain of a massive object tearing through its carefully ordered laws. Inside the Aurora arc, time itself became uncertain. The ship's systems, overwhelmed by the sudden transition, fluctuated between normal operation and complete shutdown. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows through the corridors as gravity briefly failed, then reasserted itself with nauseating force. On the bridge, Lyra regained consciousness to find Captain Rook helping injured crew members. The view screens were blank. The navigation systems reset to 0. Status? She croaked, her mouth dry from the effects of sudden acceleration. Alive. Somehow, Rook replied, helping her to her feet. The warp field collapsed immediately after transition. We're running on emergency power. Location: unknown. Navigation is recalibrating. Mira Santos stumbled onto the bridge, a bleeding gash across her forehead. The engine core is stable, but we lost most of the auxiliary systems. The Ypsilon drive is, well, I'm not sure what it is. The quantum matrices have reconfigured themselves into patterns I've never seen before. The passengers? Lyra asked, dreading the answer. Major Ngok reports 97% survival rate for the active sections. Rook answered. The sacrifice sections? We don't know yet. Life support is only partially functioning there. 1,500 people, frozen without consent to save the rest. Lyra could only hope they would understand if, when, they woke. We need to know where we are, she said, forcing her mind back to immediate problems. And how far we've come. It took nearly 3 hours for the ship's systems to recover enough for basic, stellar cartography. When the results appeared on the main view screen, a stunned silence fell over the bridge. That can't be right, Mira whispered. According to the calculations, the Aurora Arc had traveled far beyond their intended destination. The stress on the warp field from the Korvax attack, combined with the plasma wave's gravitational effects, had catapulted them across an impossible distance. 48 light-years, Lyra breathed, staring at the numbers. We've traveled 48 light-years in a single jump. Is that Solera 4? Rook asked, pointing to a blue-green planet visible on the long-range scanners. Lyra checked the spectral analysis. Yes, somehow. We've arrived precisely where we aimed, despite everything. That's statistically impossible, Mira frowned. So is surviving the death of our son, Lyra replied. I'll take the impossible victory. Over the next few days, as the ship limped toward Solera 4's orbit, they began to understand the true cost of their escape. The sacrifice sections had suffered severe damage during the warp transition. Of the 1,500 passengers placed in emergency cryogenic suspension, nearly 300 had died when their chambers failed. Major Ngok worked tirelessly to revive the survivors, many of whom emerged confused and traumatized. They had gone to sleep expecting a brief nap, only to awaken light years from home with the knowledge that everyone they'd left behind was now dead. We need to tell them everything, Ngok insisted during the leadership meeting. They deserve the truth about what happened. The truth could destabilize an already fragile community, Rook argued. These people need hope, not more trauma. The truth is, all we have left, Lyra countered. Our entire civilization was built on knowledge and transparency. I won't begin our new one with lies. She authorized a shipwide broadcast, explaining exactly what had happened. The Korvax attack, the emergency suspension, the loss of the cultural archives, the impossible jump. She ended with the one piece of news that might offer solace. Solera 4 appeared even more hospitable than their scans from Earth had suggested. As the Aurora Arc established orbit around their new home, preliminary probes confirmed what the sensors had detected. Oxygen-rich atmosphere, liquid water, vegetation, and no signs of large predators or dangerous pathogens. It's almost too perfect, Mira commented as they reviewed the data. Like it was waiting for us. Don't let the young scientists hear you talking like that, Rook smiled. They'll start a religion. Despite the captain's joke, Lyra understood the sentiment. After so much loss and so many narrow escapes, finding a truly habitable world seemed like more than mere chance. The universe had offered them a reprieve. The first landing party departed 3 days later. Lyra insisted on leading it personally, over Rook's objections. The mission needs you alive, he argued. Let the exploration teams do their job. The mission needs hope, she replied. And seeing their leader set foot on new ground will provide that? The shuttle descended through Solera 4's atmosphere with remarkable ease. No turbulence, no unexpected weather patterns. As they broke through the cloud layer, the landing team gasped collectively at the vista below. Rolling plains of vegetation that resembled Earth's grasslands stretched to the horizon, interrupted by clusters of tree-like plants with iridescent blue leaves. In the distance, mountains rose gracefully, their peaks dusted with white. "It's beautiful," whispered Aiden Wu, the young physicist who had led the Ganymede protest. Now, as part of the science team, his expertise in atmospheric analysis was crucial. "And apparently unoccupied," added Dr. Eliana Okafor, the exobiologist. "Initial scans show no large animal populations. Plenty of insect analogs and small vertebrates, but nothing apex predator-sized." The shuttle touched down in a clearing beside a gently flowing river. The team conducted final equipment checks before the airlock opened. Lyra, dressed in a lightweight environmental suit, paused at the threshold. The weight of the moment pressed on her. She would be the first human to walk on a world beyond their solar system. "For those we left behind," she said softly, then stepped onto the soil of Solara 4. The gravity was slightly less than Earth's, giving her movements a subtle bounciness. The air, when she cautiously removed her helmet after confirming breathability, smelled faintly sweet, like cinnamon and ozone. "Oxygen levels at 26%, Aiden reported, consulting his instruments. "Higher than Earth. We'll need to be careful with fire." The team spread out, collecting samples and establishing the perimeter for the first base camp. Lyra walked to the river's edge, watching the clear water flow over stones that sparkled with unfamiliar minerals. She knelt and dipped her fingers into the cool liquid. Water, the universal solvent, the cradle of life, flowing on a world orbiting a star 48 light-years from Earth. Humanity had found a new home. A shadow fell across her, and she looked up to see Captain Rook. He had insisted on joining the second shuttle once the initial landing proved safe. "Penny, for your thoughts," he said, using the ancient expression with a wry smile. "I was thinking about my parents," Lyra admitted. "They were historians. They would have loved to document this moment." Rook nodded solemnly. "My brother was an artist. He would have painted this landscape for months." They stood in silence, honoring those left behind. Around them, the landing team continued their work, setting up equipment, taking readings, laying the groundwork for humanity's future. "Dr. Vu!" Aiden called excitedly. "You need to see this!" Lyra and Rook hurried over to where the young scientist stood beside what appeared to be a stone formation. As they drew closer, Lyra realized with a shock that it wasn't natural. The stones had been deliberately arranged in a pattern. "Is that—" Rook began. "Artificial," Aiden confirmed. "And there are more over that ridge. Dr. Okafor is examining them now." They followed him to where the exobiologist crouched beside a larger arrangement of stones, clearly the remnants of a structure. "These are old," Okafor said without looking up. "Very old. Preliminary dating suggests at least 10,000 years of weathering. But they're unquestionably constructed by intelligent beings." Lyra felt a chill despite the pleasant temperature. "Are you saying Solara 4 is inhabited?" "Was inhabited," Okafor corrected. "I've found no evidence of current technological civilization, but something was here once. Something that built structures, used tools." She held up a fragment of material that resembled ceramic. "This has been fired at high temperature. That's not a natural process." "Could they still be here?" Rook asked, his hand instinctively moving toward his sidearm. "Hidden, watching us?" "Possible, but unlikely." Okafor shrugged. "The biological surveys show nothing larger than what might equate to a small deer, unless they've evolved beyond physical form." She smiled to show she was joking, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "We need to proceed with caution," Lyra decided. "Expand the archaeological survey, but don't delay the settlement preparations. Whatever was here is long gone. We need to focus on establishing our colony." Over the following weeks, as the first structures of humanity's new home rose on Solara 4, More evidence of the previous civilization emerged. Stone foundations of villages, irrigation channels, even primitive art carved into cave walls, showing bipedal figures, much smaller than humans. They were builders, Okafor explained during a briefing. But not warriors. We've found no weapons, no defensive structures, and they disappeared suddenly, about 8,000 years ago, according to our best dating methods. Disease, Major Ngok suggested. Possibly, or environmental change. Or they simply left, Okafor replied. Without written records, we may never know. Could the same thing happen to us? Asked one of the council members. The colony had established a provisional government with Lyra as its reluctant leader. We have advantages they didn't, Lyra assured them. Advanced medicine, technology, knowledge of evolutionary biology, and environmental science. We'll learn from their fate, not repeat it. As the colony grew, with prefabricated structures, giving way to permanent buildings constructed from local materials, Lyra often found herself drawn to a hilltop, overlooking both the settlement and the ancient ruins. There, at sunset, when Solara 4's binary stars dipped below the horizon in sequence, creating a spectacular double twilight, she contemplated the strange symmetry of their situation. One civilization had vanished, and another had arrived. The cycle of rise and fall played out across interstellar distances. Mind if I join you? Captain Rook, now Security Director Rook for the colony, climbed the hill to stand beside her. Free planet, she smiled. Though I might stake a claim to this view. They watched as the second sun set, casting long shadows across New Aurora, as the settlement had been named. The council's been talking, Rook said after a comfortable silence. About the cryogenic chambers. Lyra tensed. The 1,000+ survivors of the sacrifice sections had been kept in suspension during the landing and initial colonization. The official reason was medical caution, but everyone understood the practical reality. Fewer active people meant fewer resources consumed during the critical establishment phase. It's time to wake them, she said firmly. We've delayed long enough. That's what the council decided, Rook nodded. But there's concern about their reaction. They didn't choose suspension. No one chose any of this, Lyra replied. But we adapt. We survive. We build. That's what humans do. Some better than others, Rook observed, watching the colony below. Despite the challenges and traumas, New Aurora was thriving. Gardens flourished in Solara 4's fertile soil. Children, born on Earth but too young to remember it, played in the central plaza. Scientists studied the ancient ruins while engineers designed more efficient solar collectors for the binary star's abundant energy. We got lucky, Lyra acknowledged. This world is a gift. Not luck, Rook shook his head. Leadership. Your leadership. You made the hard calls when no one else could. Lyra thought of the billion souls left behind, of her parents, of the 300 who died during the sacrifice protocol. The weight of those decisions would never leave her. We all did what was necessary, she said finally, and we'll continue to do so. The following day, the first group of suspension survivors was awakened. Major Ngok had designed a careful reintegration program, combining medical care with psychological support and cultural orientation. Lyra made a point of personally welcoming each group, explaining what had happened and answering their questions honestly, no matter how difficult. Did my family on Ganymede survive? Asked a metallurgist named Thomas. No, Lyra replied gently. The plasma wave reached Jupiter's moons approximately 12 hours after our departure. There were no survivors. Did we try to save them? Did we send other ships? A biotechnician demanded. There wasn't time, Lyra explained. And the Aurora Ark was the only vessel with warp capability. Some responded with grief, others with anger, a few with quiet acceptance. All were offered the same truth. Their survival had come at an incalculable cost. But now, They had a responsibility to build something worthy of that sacrifice. 6 months after landing, New Aurora celebrated its first harvest. Crops adapted from Earth genetics had flourished in Solara 4's soil, and the colony had achieved basic food self-sufficiency. That night, under the spectacular blanket of unfamiliar stars, they held a feast in the central plaza. Lyra watched from the sidelines as children chased each other between tables, as couples danced to music played on instruments salvaged from the cultural archives, as people laughed and argued and lived. Humanity continued, 48 light-years from its birthplace. Major Ngok found her observing the celebration. "You should join them," she suggested. "They want to thank you." Lyra shook her head. "This isn't about me. It's about them. About us. All of us. Together." Still, Ngok persisted, a word from their leader would mean a lot. Reluctantly, Lyra allowed herself to be led to the center of the plaza. The music quieted, and faces turned toward her, some admiring, some still resentful, all attentive. "I'm not one for speeches," she began awkwardly. "And today isn't about words. It's about this." She gestured to the abundant food, the sturdy buildings, the thriving community. 6 months ago, we were refugees fleeing extinction. Today, we are settlers building a new world. She looked around at the faces illuminated by firelight. Each of us carries the memory of Earth, of its beauty, its flaws, its history. We are the living archive of a world that no longer exists. That is a heavy burden, but also an honor. Her voice strengthened. We will never forget those we left behind. Their memory lives in every building we raise, every child we teach, every discovery we make. They are with us in the soil of this new earth, in the air we breathe, in the future we create. She raised a cup of Solara 4's first wine, made from a fruit that resembled grapes, but glowed faintly blue in the dark. To those we lost, to those who remain, to humanity's new dawn. To new dawn, the crowd echoed, raising their own cups. As the celebration resumed, Lyra slipped away, climbing once more to her hilltop. The twin moons of Solara 4 illuminated the landscape, casting dual shadows behind every object, a constant reminder that this world was not Earth, would never be Earth. Yet, as she looked down at the lights of the settlement, at the people moving about their new lives, she felt something she had not experienced since before the crisis: hope. Humanity had survived. Against impossible odds, across unimaginable distances, they had found a new home among the stars. Whatever challenges Solara 4 might hold, the mystery of its vanished inhabitants, the adaptation to its ecosystem, the psychological trauma of being the last remnant of Earth, they would face them together. Lyra watched as the first moon set, leaving only its companion to illuminate the night. One light extinguished, one remaining, like the sun they had lost and the new stars they had found. The cycle continued, life persisted, and in the gentle, alien breeze of Solara 4, Lyra Vu, the woman who had guided humanity to its new home, finally allowed herself to weep for all they had left behind, and to smile for all that lay ahead.